Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from the MBS. It's titled Third-Party Certification Explained. And as it says on the tin, we're going to be talking all about third-party certification, some things that are happening in the industry, and I'll be joined by a series of panel guests where we're going to have a quite an in-depth conversation around certification and the importance of that. So just a bit of housekeeping before we start. All attendees' microphones are muted. Any questions that you may have, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and we'll follow these up after the webinar. Unfortunately, we won't have time to answer these in person today, but we will get back to you if you post those in the Q&A. If you want to find out more about anything that you've seen, the guest panelists will provide details throughout their slides of how you can contact them. But if you're interested in anything that MBS have been showing you, or what we've been discussing, you can visit the mbs.com or email us at info@thembs.com. So your speakers for today is myself, Lee Jones. I am the head of manufacturer solutions at MBS. I've been with the company now for approximately 4 years. Prior to that, I worked in the construction product manufacturing sector for well over 2 decades. So third-party certification from both sides of the fence is something that I've worked on provision of, but also making sure that it's communicated correctly to the specifiers through the MBS platform. Also joining me today, we're going to have 3 panel guests when we get to the panel session. These will be Jason Harries from the British Board of Agreement, Simon Gosling from Quiet Mark, and Graham Yeo from the Centre for Assessment. Just a little bit about who MBS are for anybody that's not familiar with us. MBS are part of the Big Factor Group, who are a Swedish technology firm with operations all around the world, and they own a lot of different businesses on different continents and different countries that are very similar to MBS, and also our sister company, Glenigan. So MBS and Glenigan form part of the Big Factor UK operations across the world. The group operates in well over 1 million active projects and employs just under 2,000 people. So quite a large organization, but specifically focused on delivering digital information throughout the construction industry. From MBS specifically, we were set up 50 years ago. We were founded actually by the Royal Institute of British Architects, who we were owned by up until a couple of years ago when we were bought out by the Big Factor Group. MBS was set up to basically structure and standardize specifications throughout the UK construction industry. Today, it's become a worldwide used template, and it's used by the majority of specifiers in the UK, but also others around the world today. But going from where we were with these paper templates back in the 1970s to today, we're actually a fully cloud-based platform which connects construction product manufacturers to the specifiers. The MBS platforms, we have our IBA CPD. So if people are looking at providing CPD content, this is something that we can facilitate for you on behalf of the RIBA. As with any continual professional development, the architecture profession in particular is very high on this with their agendas, and the chartered practices have to achieve 35 hours a year minimum to gain a minimum of 100 points through their CPD provision, and we help hundreds of manufacturers to deliver that content to those specifiers. We then have Mbs Source, which I mentioned just now. Mbs Source is an online product search engine. You can go and search for hundreds of thousands of different construction products within this from thousands of different manufacturers. But importantly, you can actually use that information that's contained with them to add to the spec or add to the model, which in turn links to MBS Chorus, which is our online specification tool. Moving back onto the webinar for today then, what we're going to cover is I'm going to talk through some industry updates around third-party certification. We're going to look at the importance of verifiable data, particularly in today's climate with safety and sustainability being high on everyone's agenda. Verification of information is absolutely paramount. We're going to look at how those third-party certificates link to the specification and how they can aid those processes, the different routes to certification. So if you are a manufacturer, for example, and you're looking at getting a material product system certified for one particular credential, or if you're looking at getting your business certified for different credentials, we're going to be taking a look at how you can get that achieved. Some of that will be answered within the panel discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got BBA, Quiet Mark, and CFA joining us today. I'm going to give you a demo on how MBS platform works in relation to third-party certifications. And then once all that's done, I'll finish off with a wrap-up and summary, we'll give you some key points and let everybody get on with the day. So, introduction. Third-party certificates in construction are used quite widely throughout the whole project timeline. But what I wanted to do was sort of narrow it down into 3 key areas where they would be used, and important the different sections within that. So first of all, and the obvious one is construction product manufacturers. For them, third-party certification can give a USP over competitors. But more importantly, it offers that higher level of assurance to the people that are using their products or their product information, in particular when they're writing specifications, that what they are claiming is actually backed up and verified by somebody that's independent, and it's not just the manufacturer themselves that's stating that claim. It then gives that confidence in the product and system, or the service even. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the product itself. It could be about the service, particularly if somebody's offering an installation service, for example, that specification, that choice for that particular product or material or that service is going to meet the requirements and expectations of the customer. We've then got the specifiers themselves. And similarly to what the manufacturer's benefits are, this is what the specifiers are actually looking to get. So the reassurance that products are robustly tested is absolutely number one. You've only got to take a look in the media any given day, and outside of the typical politics that are going on at the moment and things around the world in relation to construction specifically, fire safety and achieving net zero are very, very much within visibility on a daily basis. So making sure that we can communicate information relating to that, but also to other aspects as well, is absolutely paramount. But the specifiers need to know that what is being claimed is true. They need to have that reassurance. As I mentioned, it could be about a whole product, or it could be just a key aspect of a product. So it could be something like the acoustic properties of a piece of insulation, for example, might be certified by one body, but then the fire safety standards might be certified by somebody else. So there's a lot that needs to be considered, and hopefully this webinar will help with that. And then ultimately, you just need to make sure that the product material system, wherever it is that they're specifying, will perform when it's installed. Moving into the installers then, which is sort of the last area that I was going to highlight on this. For them, assurance that the workmanship is of a high standard. So going away from what the products can do, obviously making sure that the service that somebody offers and the level of workmanship that they can deliver, that can be certified. So looking for third-party certification in that particular field can offer an installer or contractor of whatever description the ability to stand out and allow the end client really to be rest assured that the workmanship that they're going to be delivering to them for their end result is going to be best practice. But that said, going back to the products, the quality of the products themselves on what the installers are using is absolutely crucial to them delivering a high end finished goods. So yeah, the whole thing sort of ties in line, and it's important to have this verification. As I mentioned, it's not just products themselves that can be certified. Your organization could be certified. Mbs have recently just gone through PAS 2060 certification, for example, which is our carbon neutrality status. So the business has recently become carbon neutral. You could also look at something like ISO 9001 or ISO 14001 to demonstrate that your operations are operating as efficiently and as effectively and considerately, as they can be. It could just be a facility. So if you're doing something, does this meet the relevant requirements? As we mentioned on the last slide, it could be a service. It could also be a manufacturing process as well. So for the construction product manufacturers that are listening, yes, obviously making sure that the claims about your product and the performance criteria about that is absolutely paramount. But how about the manufacturing process? Are you checking for quality and that kind of thing? So there's a lot that can be done there outside of sort of performance specific certification. But moving into the specifics around performance of construction materials and products, you could test a whole system. So this might be something where you're looking at the acoustic properties, for example, of a whole stud wall which is something we're going to take a look at later, or it could be the fire performance of a facade system. It could be a whole product. So it might be that, I don't know, you make an electrical appliance, you could have the volume of that, you could have the energy consumption, a load of different things can be certified against this. It could just be a specific product characteristic though. So as we mentioned, for something like a tap, for example, yes, you might be making this to an ISO 9001 compliant process, but when it gets to the performance criteria, does it have something like the water regulation association standard assigned to it, where you can get third-party verification on that? Or it could be the product information. There's a lot that's going on in the moment around product information, particularly the digital deliverable of this. MBS have got a number of documents and webinars available to download at the mbs.com on the code for construction product information, which is just one key example of how people are trying to structure and standardize how data is delivered to end users, particularly around it being clear, unambiguous, and importantly, trusted. So there's sort of schemes along those lines, and the code for construction products information is probably the biggest example of that in the industry today, of how your data can be third-party certified, and to demonstrate that you're delivering and allowing people to do their jobs as efficiently as they possibly can. This said, MBS do a lot of research in the industry. What we've got here is a chart from a report back in 2019, which we did on behalf of the Construction Products Association. It was the Construction Product Information Survey, which actually was the precursor that led to the Code for Construction Product Information. And in this particular survey, one of the questions that we asked was, which of the following types of information do you provide or need when considering construction products? And as you can see there, third-party certifications is second on the highest rank. That's only the top 5 from that result. There was actually quite a high number of different bits of information that were ranked on that, and you can freely download this report from the Construction Product Association website still today, if you wanted to take a look. But more recently, MBS actually reviewed and surveyed the CPD users. We obviously provide CPD provision as a service. So with those, we asked them what was useful to provide with regards to supporting documentation when people are considering specifying materials and products. And ranked third within that list was information about certification. So they want to know who's certified the product, is it third-party verified, and so forth. So the data's there, people are asking for this, and if it's something that you're considering, it would be highly recommended, whether that's to use third-party certification when writing your specifications, or if you're a provider of products, systems, services, and actually demonstrating that what you are claiming is actually backed up, independently verified. In the industry itself, obviously the Building Safety Bill achieved royal assent on the 28th of April, so it's now the Building Safety Act. Part of this is going to be a new construction products regulator, which is going to sit under the OPSS. It's a big part of the Building Safety Act, and we're expecting this to come into force within sort of 12 to 18 months if you look at the government's project timeline for this. So we're looking at April, October next year. As with anything, the bill achieving royal assent sort of came out the blue a little bit, really. So don't be surprised if this is being implemented or it's phased in slightly earlier. But likewise, it could overrun slightly, but it's coming, and you really, really need to start to take note of this. What the regulator is going to do is they're going to have enforcement powers to ultimately enter manufacturing premises and require information. So if somebody is potentially reported for falsifying claims, for example, the regulator now has the power legally to actually go in and assess this to make sure that people are doing what they're saying. It will predominantly focus around safety critical products, and products that are safety critical. The actual term that the government's giving is they're identified as that when they could cause death or serious injury if they were to fail. Now, this list of these products, systems, materials is still being defined by the government at the moment, but hopefully we'll get sight of that very soon. Also underneath that is safe products. So this is where something that under normal or reasonably foreseeable conditions of use, the product doesn't really present any risk to the health or safety of a person. So not so critical there, but if you're manufacturing safety critical products in particular, it's something that you must take note of. And when we're talking about reasonable and foreseeable conditions, so this is just talking about the general use of the product, it's where the product might come under stress, for example. So if the building was to catch fire, how would that product perform and react within that? So there's a lot that's going to be considered, and there'll be more, as I mentioned, announced as the new regulator comes online and actually delivers the key information that we need to take note of. But I think in relation to this webinar itself, the thing that strikes a chord with me the most is that they're going to be able to do their own testing. Now, this isn't going to be third-party testing on behalf of people. It's going to be having the ability to test products, to carry out, to commission its own product testing, to investigate non-compliance. So if somebody's claiming that a product meets a certain performance criteria, they're going to be able to test this. It's not just a case that they'll be able to get into your premises, as I mentioned earlier, and ask for the information and do a sort of investigative report on that case. They can actually test the materials and actually check the performance of this. Source for this information is here. If you go to the .gov UK website, you can search for construction product regulator and it'll bring back the information for that. Moving away from building safety, sustainability is obviously high on the agenda. Now, there's a lot of information that specifiers are looking for, and we're being asked for this every day at MBS, and how we can improve things within the platform. Key information that people are looking for in particular is things like recycled content, the recyclability of the product. So once it's at its end of life, what can you do with it in regards of disposal? Can it be reused? How much of that can be reused? What materials are contained within it, and so forth. Zenly and use performance. So if we're looking at something like energy efficiency, getting passive measures right in the building are important. So U values, there's a lot that's going on outside of U values there with the changes to Part L of the building regulations, but also things like country of origin and manufacture. You could have the most high performing products in the world, but if it's manufactured in the United Kingdom, but it's then being installed in, I don't know, the United Arab Emirates, it's going to have a lot of logistics that are involved in that. So sourcing local is helping people to drive down embodied carbon. And importantly, things like volatile organic compounds. So what toxic emissions effectively that could be harmful to the human beings are within the products and could be emitted into the atmosphere. I know from past experience as a manufacturer, I worked for a company that used a lot of chipboard in their products, and things like urea formaldehyde content within the actual bonding agents that made up the main structure alongside the wood chippings was quite critical on displaying that. And then obviously last but certainly not least is embodied carbon. Manufacturers are starting to provide this now. There are set sort of examples and approximations that people like RICS are using now within some of their information that's being communicated, and there's a lot of things like life cycle analysis tools that are containing this. But if a manufacturer can demonstrate their own embodied carbon, if that's lower than the generic one or the next competitors, it's obviously going to have this USP, but that will require some third-party verification to demonstrate that. Most notably, EPDs, so environmental product declarations, will look at the whole life cycle of a construction product. Again, that can be certified through each stage or the whole set of stages, whatever the manufacturer is looking to disclose within that. I think importantly from a manufacturing perspective, stages A1 to A3, so cradle to gate, are a really key one there. But as I mentioned, this is being widely used by life cycle analysis software. A lot of architects that we've been speaking to of late have been using these tools to actually aid them with the calculations. We recently announced in a webinar about the government dropping Part Z, which is the building regulation that was going to enforce embodied carbon measurement on new builds. Recently seen in the press again that that's now been picked up by another minister, so something like that is coming. The UK Green Building Council, for example, are really pushing for whole life carbon assessments through the built environment, not only just for new builds but for refurb. So it's something that, as a manufacturer, if you're listening, you should take note of. But obviously, specifiers, they're doing what they can, and if it is something that you're not considering at the moment, hopefully the demonstration through how MBS can surface this information to you might help you get into that moving forward. And ultimately, yeah, it can be a differentiator for those manufacturers that are engaging with this. So that's a bit of background on third-party certification, a bit of an update as to where the industry is at with it at the moment and the reasons why it's being asked for and what's being asked for. I'm just going to do a very quick demo of what third-party certification information is available within the Mbs platforms and how that links to the specifications. And then we'll open up to the panel and introduce you to those. So what we can see here is Mbs Source. Mbs from a platform perspective effectively have two core products. We've got Mbs Source and we've got Mbs Chorus, which you can see now, which is the specification tool. In regards to Mbs Source, I'm on the landing page at the moment. There's some key information there about Mbs Source works, some of the recently viewed products that I've been looking at, featured manufacturers and products. We can look at different categories if you're looking to gain some inspiration for your projects themselves, and even literature. We can look at case studies and things like that. We got some helpful tips on how Mbs can help you. A lot of free to download documents from the mbs.com, which all link into these ones that you can see on the screen here. And then further down, we've got some testimonials and links to information about the business, but quite importantly, we've got things like the plugins for the different BIM software and any sort of free tools that you might find useful for utilizing the data. But for this webinar specifically, we're interested in third-party certification. So we can happily search through hundreds of thousands of construction products here, but in a role play mode, let's pretend I was a specifier and I was looking at a suspended ceiling for a project that I was working on. I can type that into the search here, and it uses a lot of SEO and keywords. So it'll actually bring in a load of suggestions, but in a typical fashion, similar to a lot of modern sort of search engines like Amazon, for example, or John Lewis that you might use as a sort of customer in your own personal time. There's these filters on the left-hand side, so you can filter by the specific product types, or if you're interested in certain third-party certification, you can actually filter by those. So in this particular case, we might be interested in the acoustic properties, and as a specifier, like they're going to be familiar with Quiet Mark and the certification that they can do around that. So I can then filter just by those particular products that have that certification. If we take a look at this first one, it's an EcoFan product. You can see that this has got quite a lot of third-party certification attached to it. So we've got an EPD from the Building Research Establishment there. So that's a third-party curated environmental product declaration there. They've got the indoor air comfort and the declaration of performance, but then we've got that Quiet Mark certification there as well. So as well as all the useful information that Mbs provide around the application that the product's suitable for, some of the key information, the classification to both Uniclass and cores, and then also the spec information that allows us to connect to the spec, we can actually scroll down or we could use the navigation key from the top. We can get to the literature, but then we've got those third-party certificates there as well. So if I was curating a load of third-party certificates to associate to my spec or to the information that I was handing over for the project, they're all readily available to download here. So we can go and click on those and download them. Likewise, it might be that we were looking for something that had fire resistant properties, and insulation is probably a good example of this and acting as a barrier. If we search for that type of information, you can see here that we've got a lot of products because we haven't filtered that down. But if we were looking at something from the BBA, for example, we could go into this and it would filter those products down. So if we look at the Superglass blown cavity wall insulation there, just the first one that we click on. You can see that, again, there's a lot of third-party certification attached to this. So these guys have got ISO 14001, which shows that they're doing as much as they can from an operational perspective in relation to the environment. Also ISO 9001 from an operational perspective of being efficient and adhering to best practices. But we've then got that BBA certificate down there. So if we look at the specification data, a lot of that information will come from this third-party certification within there. So if we're looking at fire performance in this particular case, you can see that this has got a reaction to fire class of A1 against BSEN 13501 Part 1. Again, if you're looking at third-party certificates, you could go down and those could be very quickly downloaded from here. If you click on them, they'll take you to an overview of the certificate, but then we can just quickly look at that and we can utilize that information to our needs. Within the specification itself then, there's a number of ways that you can add a product to spec, but what I've done is I've got a demo project here, and I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of how that works and how the third-party certification links into it. So first of all, we may be doing some internal walling specs here. So I've just named this one type A for now. It's obviously just a demonstration for the webinar. We've got metal framed wall lining systems added in, so I can click on that. This is the overarching system. I've parked quite a few of the properties at the moment just because we don't need to talk through the whole process of writing a specification for a stud wall within this particular example. But the little chips here that we've added in actually link to the subproducts within that system. So not only can we specify the system in its entirety, we can then specify the system performance. So if we were looking at things like fire performance of this, or we wanted to add something like the acoustic performances of the wall or the air tightness, that kind of thing. If we were looking at sustainability in that particular sense, there's a lot that we can add there. Once that's been added in and it's saved, what it will then do is drop in the specification clauses for the products that make up that system. One of the real big benefits this really from using Uniclass, actually, in my experience, whilst the common arrangement of work sections is great and it's provided a basis for the industry to write specifications for a long time now, and it's still quite widely used actually, Uniclass itself actually allows more granular clarity on what's within the spec. So looking at sort of high-rise residential buildings, for example, where the new regulations are asking for a full asset management list to be passed to the client at the end, having this contained and easily to drill down from the systems directly to the products is allowing the clients to actually have that list of the assets at component level within the building. A couple of years ago, we held one of our construction leaders summits, and we heard from Alan Q, and it's something that they're also using, the largest social housing provider in the UK, to actually contain all of their information now as well. But moving back to third-party certs, we've now got the mineral wood slab insulation, and we can add a description in here. It might just be, I don't know, type A insulation for that particular wall. We can add general requirements in, so we can add some information about the installation of this. And again, that could be looking at third-party certification for the installers to make sure that the workmanship's correct, as we mentioned earlier on. But in relation to the products and the performance itself and the third-party certification that goes with this, you can see that straight away now Chorus has bought in a load of manufacturers. These are all directly linked from what we saw within Mbs Source. And if I was going to look for, I don't say Rockwell, it might be a manufacturer that I specify quite widely. I can then just filter and look by the products that they make. So I might recall that in the last particular project I worked on, we used the sound insulation slab. So I can look at the information on this and add that into my specification. Now, what we've got here is the specification's been auto-populated, but I can see from within the data that's within there that this is actually third-party certified. It's got the quiet mark certification within that, and all of that information can be passed through into the spec. For any manufacturers that are listening, if you have third-party verified certification and a source listing, but you haven't uploaded that, please speak to your account manager. It will stand you in good stead, and hopefully we can help to make the industry a lot more transparent, and provide that reassurance between ourselves to make sure that specifications are trusted. So I'd like to introduce you now to the panel. And first up is Jason from the British Board of Agreement. Jason, if you'd like to introduce a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do at the BBA.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you to everyone listening. If I just give a little bit of background on the British Board of Agreement for anyone who may not know much about us. So the BBA have been operating for over 55 years within the construction product sector as a trusted and impartial certification body. The BBA were largely founded at a time when construction was in a boom and new and innovative products and materials were coming to market. And there was a need to provide some assurance that products were safe, were durable, and were fit for purpose. And very much we're seeing that is the market again today as more innovation is coming through. The BBA, whilst we're a for-profit organisation, we're limited by guarantee. And this is what makes us quite different here, is that we look to reinvest back into the construction industry as a whole for the benefit of all the stakeholders. So what does the BBA represent? Well, there's a number of areas. So we're there to mitigate risk, and identifying risk is an important step for certification. And we take the steps to deal with those risks that we see. We find as a BBA, the services go even further than test, certify, and forget. It's much more about being on the journey with the client. We're there to demonstrate product performance value. So it's supporting what manufacturers claim, or certainly certifying and being able to validate what the true performance of a product is. So it offers that integrity to a manufacturer's product in the market that has been third-party certified. And it's the support of an impartial organisation, so it can take away any potential conflict with the concept of manufacturers being, well, it's our own data. We're there to be impartial on these matters, so the information for the market is true and validated. We're there to help with new market opportunities. The BBA work with clients in over 72 countries globally. Often clients looking to break into the UK market will come to the BBA as it is a way of validating that product and showing that it's suitable for use in the UK built environment. To establish product suitability, the evolution of the industry landscape allows for agility from products and systems. BBA certification supports and understands adapting expectations, so it gives clients an up-to-date, relevant demonstration of their suitability for the applications they're stating. We're serious about high standards and quality. Since the mid-60s, the BBA has worked throughout the entire supply chain to understand the evolution and expectations and the innovations of the different areas, so we develop sustainable built habits. We continue to play that role in shaping building regulations and legislation and understanding it for our clients' benefit. And through BBA's stringent focus on high standards, we firmly deliver high quality certification to the industry. The BBA help where no standards exist. We acknowledge that some of our clients are innovators, that sometimes people are bringing products into new areas for new applications, and we are constantly adapting to stay ahead of this curve and to look at how products might be tested to achieve what is being claimed. We're there to establish reassurance, trust, and loyalty. So success of new product development depends on the speed of it being accepted by the market, of it building a trust and loyalty within the market. But markets can be, within construction, certainly can be conservative. slow to accept. So having third-party certification is a way of accelerating that and proving that it exists in that market. Provision of competence and accountability. The BBA help to design guidance and installation procedures that give clarity and set a baseline for competent installation and how the product should be used in performance. Our competency schemes ensure that implementation of certified products is controlled and a validated process. Market differentiation, a very key reason why many clients would come to third-party certification is to be able to be recognized as something different from their competition, something that can set them apart by having a product that is thoroughly verified. Compliance with building regs and requirements. The BBA, through its legacy, has remained firmly rooted to understanding the evolving regulations and legislation. We seek to try and remove some of the ambiguity from the selection and specification process to enable clients to know and understand what a product's validity and its purpose is and how it compares with regulations. And long-term factory and production consistency. It's no good having a certificate that may only be assessed on the day that it becomes valid. It's about having that long-term relationship to be able to inspect the factory and production controls and be on that journey with the client. BBA is regulated by UCAS in a number of areas for our certification, for testing, for inspection, and for management systems. As a very short look at the services that the BBA offer, the key one is product approval and certification, with the BBA Agrimalt certificate being the best known. The BBA also provide audit and inspection services, approved installer schemes, client managed inspection services, management systems, and growing is the testing area, which is available for client testing as well as for our own in-house testing against certification. Very briefly, when we talk about product approval and certification, we're looking at a number of areas, and this can include other areas that people may not be familiar with the BBA for, things like MCS, microgeneration certification, the UKTA, which is taking over from ETA post-Brexit, and our HAPAS scheme, which is a highway approval scheme that is administered by the BBA. So that's a bit of the history of the BBA and a very short introduction to what we do. Where are we heading? Well, to continue to lead certification for the construction product sector to meet needs of industry, such as the changes to digitalization. As an organization, we're embarking on some exciting new products for the future, and those include areas like sustainability and further services to support closely innovation from our clients. And as an organization, we have some very inspirational leadership who have brought a lot of change in recent years, and that is through the continuing investment in our employees and their development, as well as our processes to ensure we can deliver market-leading service and quality. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jason. Great set of slides there. I think it would be great to hear from Simon Gosling now from QuietMark. Simon, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about QuietMark, please, that'd be great.
Thank you, Lee. My name's Simon Gosling. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at QuietMark, and thank you for inviting QuietMark to take place in this MBS webinar, Third Party Certification Explained. So let me start by taking 5 minutes to tell you a bit more about who QuietMark is and the work that we do. QuietMark is the independent global certification program associated with the UK Noise Abatement Society Charitable Foundation, which itself was established in 1959. Through scientific testing and assessment, QuietMark identifies the quietest products in multiple categories spanning many sectors, including home appliances and technology, building sector materials, and commercial sector products. When consumers and trade buyers see the distinctive QuietMark logo on a product, they trust that it has been thoroughly tested and certified as one of the quietest available on the market, thereby stimulating manufacturing worldwide to prioritize responsible acoustic design to reduce noise pollution. We call that the quiet revolution. And to date, we've certified products for over 80 manufacturers. In domestic appliances, you'll see familiar brands like Miele, Dyson, Philips, and in the building sector, building materials by brands like Mbsr Acoustic or Saint-Gobain Ecofon, Rockwool. We certify products for all these brands that you see here. Testing, assessment, and certification. So the QuietMark lab, we have our own lab in Clapham in London. And because we don't live in acoustically perfect built environments, we test in a mock kitchen to include standard reflecting surfaces that mirror how someone would experience a typical sound of a product in their homes and in their daily lives. And despite our mock kitchen including typical reflecting surfaces, it is, however, extremely quiet, without influence from external environmental noise such as road traffic, with typical background noises levels falling well below 25 decibels, which is what you'd expect to hear in a recording studio. And this is important because it avoids any other sounds not related to the product operation affecting the results. In addition to conducting acoustic measurement of products in our purpose-built lab, QuietMark also conducts assessments of declared technical test data and full acoustic test reports, and we carry out additional testing with a network of global specialist acoustic lab partners for specific product categories. We work with several teams, including Anderson Acoustics, Head Acoustics, and Intertech, enabling us to assess products and identify ways to make them less noisy. Certification. So when a product has passed QuietMark certification, when a product passes QuietMark certification, the brand is invited to take out a license to use the QuietMark logo across all associated sales and marketing touchpoints. Brands receive a certificate of accreditation for their certified products and QuietMark logo usage guidelines. And on the right in this slide, we can see the QuietMark logo used alongside the Which Best Buy logo by Worcester Bosch at their trade event stand when they were at the Installer Show 2021. And you can also see it here on the fans landing page on Dyson's business website. The QuietMark and MBS partnership. So partnerships are very much a part of the DNA of QuietMark, and we've drawn together a unique alliance of major retailers and MBS to help shoppers and specified find the quietest appliances and technology and acoustic materials available on the market to support people's health and well-being. And by highlighting the QuietMark as a trusted symbol, our partners are enabling buyers to make a more informed choice about the quieter, high-quality performance products with materials with, By highlighting the distinctive QuietMark logo as a trusted symbol, our partners are enabling buyers to make a more informed choice about the quieter, high-performance products with materials that they share their lives with. So just as an example, as a consumer, we're all consumers, we all buy products for our homes. And on the John Lewis website, when you go to the John Lewis website, you'll see a landing page, and that landing page has information about who QuietMark is, what we do, and why it's important to put quieter products in your homes. And we also have a QuietMark filter. You can see in the middle there, QuietMark filter for washing machines. And in 2021, the technical director of John Lewis told the BBC News that with the advent of work from home and a need for quieter appliances, they're now seeing over 10,000 quiet searches every month via that left-hand navigation bar on John Lewis' website. And we really want to bring that ease of access to MBS through our MBS partnership. The MBS partnership itself was formed in December 2021, last year, and it was announced to empower architects to specify acoustics first by providing that kind of shortcut for specifiers to source QuietMark certified products. And the new partnership will enable the 3,600 practices that use MBS to make 13.6 million specification decisions per month. It will enable them to quickly find QuietMark certified products, and the aim being, of course, to elevate the oral design of buildings, optimizing the overall level of acoustic comfort for occupants. And here you can see on Mbs Source, just as you saw with johnlewis.com, the ability to use that filter to quickly access and source QuietMark certified products. We also, on quietmark.com, so Dyson is a product that is QuietMark certified. Their hand dry, their V hand dry air blade. It's also on MBS. And if you go to quietmark.com and look for that product, as you can see bottom right of this slide, there's the ability to add to spec directly from quietmark.com. And here are a selection of brands. We mentioned Dyson already, but brands like Internorm, Miele, Woodup, Rockwool, Rockfon. These are brands whose products are QuietMark certified, but are also listed on the Mbs Source platform. When we announced the partnership, it had a great response from many manufacturers. And just as one testimonial example here, Paul Gregory, who's the Global Specification and Training Director for Dyson Professionals, says that Dyson enjoys a good relationship with MBS and sees more than 10,000 impressions every month, with around 500 bin files downloaded. And he says that I'm sure the acoustics first shortcut will drive more awareness of QuietMark certified products for the built environment and go on to drive more specification of Dyson solutions for business. Great stuff. And we also have a QuietMark podcast, which I host, and that has now had about 40 episodes. We've had about 70 guests on the show and over 10,000 downloads talking about the benefits of improved acoustics in the built environment. We've spoken to experts in the industry from BDP, Arup, Hawley, Hawkins Brown, and Stephen in the bottom corner there, Stephen Howell, who's the Innovation Director from MBS. And when he was on the show, he said that when we first started at MBS, we held a focus group of architects and engineers asking what was most important to them when searching for products. Third-party verification came out top, which is, of course, is what we're here to talk about today. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Simon. Great to hear what you guys do.
Thank you.
Just before we get on, I'd like to introduce Graham. Graham, I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about Centre for Assessment. And yeah, I'll hand the reins to you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Lee. Okay, yeah, very quick introduction. So my name is Graham Yo from Centre for Assessment. I'm Business Development Manager, and I tend to focus on ISO standards, which is pretty much our main sort of product, really. So we are a UCAS accredited certification body, around 20 years experience delivering robust client-focused audits and assessments. So the main things we do with ISO are the standards that I'm sure many people will be familiar with. So ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, and 27001. So that's quality management, environmental management, occupational health and safety, and information security. So these are things that are relevant for any business, but you know, we do see particularly common in manufacturing and construction. Certainly the first three. UCAS is the sole national accreditation body in the UK, appointed by the government, by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, who recommend that you should use UCAS accreditation if it's possible. The UCAS obviously demonstrates the competence of our auditors, the impartiality of our audits, and you know, really can make our clients assured that our audits are you know, independent and giving them what they need. We get audited by UCAS as part of this process. I think we're up to 5 or 6 weeks every year. They come and check us to make sure we're doing things correctly. So it's not just you know, a tick box or a piece of paper. It's something that we have to take very seriously, you know, so that we can give that assurance to our clients as well and use the UCAS badge. We're also UCAS accredited approved body now. We're formally a notified body for EN 1090, which is possibly a little bit different to some of the products that the MBS normally deal with, but it's basically structural steel and aluminium that ends up in buildings. So that's part of the CPR. We don't really do much product certification. Historically, this could also be done as a management system alongside sort of ISOs. So that's how we got into it. And it's something we've continued with. So technically, it's now a product certification, which we do a lot of, obviously for steel fabricators. We are also currently embarking on an exciting journey with PAS 2060. There's been a bit of a buzz about this lately, and it's something we've been working together with the MBS towards their certification for that. I think we're coming on to that a little bit more later, but that's a really interesting new standard, which is regarding sort of carbon neutrality. We're also licensed by the Law Society of England and Wales to assess against their standard, the Lexel standard for solicitors. And there are a whole host of other ones we do as well. Customer Service Excellence, which is used to be owned by the Cabinet Office, and that's also a UCAS accredited service. ISO 22301, business continuity. So there's a whole raft of things we offer, and we also offer some training and other support services that are associated with it as well. Cyber Essentials, some of you may have come across. It's a government-backed scheme, basically to try and help probably smaller companies get a sort of certain level of hygiene, cyber hygiene, as they call it. So not a full-on information security audit or anything, but it's something that people need if they want to work with government departments. And that's been a really successful scheme in getting a lot of companies thinking about some of the things that they should be in terms of information security and cyber security. A couple of others as well, just mentioned GWO, Global Wind Organization Training Center certification. We're approved by the GWO for that. And I think we're the only provider of EN 14065 audits. So we partner with the Textile Services Association and the National Laundry Group to deliver that, which is about sort of quality management for laundry, sort of preventing like biocontamination and various other risks associated with it. So that's what we do, not specifically construction or manufacturing, but we've got a whole raft of things, and obviously that touches a lot of manufacturing construction companies. Auditors based across the UK, clients all across the UK and internationally, Europe, US, Asia, all across the world. And we've got a wide scope of accreditation for our management systems. So we don't concentrate on one specific sector. Some of the things I've already mentioned, quite distinct. We very happy dealing with lawyers and accountants and other professional services, as well as construction firms, recycling firms, various manufacturing firms. So we've got a whole raft of different sorts of clients. Tend to be in the sort of micro and SME sort of area rather than big companies. A little bit about Centre for Assessment. We are proud to be part of the Growth Company. So we are a company within a larger group, which is an award-winning social enterprise. We just had an email today confirming that we have our gold mark accreditation as a social enterprise now, and we're looking to help individuals but also businesses, and try and have a positive impact where we can. So not for profit, social enterprise, and all our surplus is reinvested into our services. If you'd like to get in touch at all, you can reach me directly on these details, or you can contact the office, sales@centreforassessment.co.uk, and the number there. Thanks very much.
Good stuff. Thanks, Graham. So thanks very much, everybody, for those introductions. Really, really useful to see who we've got having this discussion now. And I think it was quite nice to see that we've got that broad spectrum of third-party certification, from products right through to end of life and even the legal side of things. So yeah, hopefully it should make for a good discussion. So the first question I wanted to ask is an open question, really, so please shout up if you'd like to answer that. But when we're thinking about manufacturers, and in specific construction product manufacturers, what should these people be considering when they're embarking upon third-party certification? Would anybody like to throw something into the room on that? Yeah, Jason, please.
I'm happy to start with that one, Lee. I think the advice I would give in that respect is look at the certification body as being a long-term partner, and look at the relationship as being a collaboration. Understand that certification is not a one-off assessment, but is an ongoing process. Be aware that changes to production and feedstocks need discussing with the certification body. Be aware regulations, legislation may change, that certificates require updating. That's the reason that third-party certification can offer such a reassurance to the market, because with bodies like the BVA, I talk about our work, we work very closely with the clients to ensure that that certificate remains as valid and relevant today as the day it was first awarded. So treat it as a collaborative relationship.
Excellent. And anybody else got any thoughts on that at all?
I think just to expand a little bit on what Jason said, talking about long-term relationships, I think that's really important that people have a sort of long-term plan for it and a commitment to it. It's not really something that you can say, let's try it for 6 months and see how it goes, because you're not going to see the returns necessarily in 6 months. So there needs to be, careful consideration, like Jason said, about who you're dealing with, but also, why you're getting it, what benefits you expect from it, what outcomes you're expecting from it, rather than just, having a notion that getting a certification is a good idea. I think it needs to be, well planned and part of a sort of long-term process.
I would agree with that. And I would say, when considering assessment, ask yourself the question, how likely am I to pass? Have we done the groundwork in the manufacturing of this product for it to be likely to pass? You wouldn't do a driving test, hopefully, if you didn't think you had a chance of passing a driving test. And similarly, if I take, for example, a brand like Novi, who make extractor fans for cookers and that type of thing, they dedicate so much of their innovation. They start with the power. And so obviously an extractor hood has got to extract the dirt in the kitchen, and they never compromise that power, but they work hard and innovate to reduce the sound till that product hasn't compromised power, but is as quiet as human conversation. And so they've really dedicated time, effort, and innovation to achieving quietness, and then they put it forward to get QuietMark certification. And consequently, QuietMark only certifies 10 to 20% of the quietest products in any category. If you haven't worked hard to be in that category, of 10 to 20%, then don't submit. Assessment at QuietMark is free, but certification is what you pay the license fee for. And I think, as Jason said, it's a long-term partnership, because yes, a product might get QuietMark certified in year 1, but when it comes to year 2, it doesn't necessarily mean it therefore still qualifies as the quietest in its category. And that hopefully stimulates and motivates manufacturing globally to reduce noise in their products, because a hairdryer, for example, might be QuietMark certified this year, but doesn't mean it's going to be certified next year if it's no longer in that quietest category. So we're really trying to bring down noise in production, and that's part of what we do as a company.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody. I think, Jason, actually, I know you were referenced quite a lot then. I think your slides hit the nail on the head when you said it's not a certify and forget type thing. You've got to treat it as an ongoing journey. And quite rightly, as Graham and Simon just mentioned, I think that's pretty important. I think my history as a manufacturer and before MBS, it was, we were innovating all the time for different manufacturers I worked for, but you only got to look at technology yourself that you might buy as a consumer. It's out of date within 6 months. So yeah, the standards are constantly evolving. I think that's a good thing. Jason, I think just going back to yourself with certification, and in particular with construction products, do you think having third-party certification helps value engineering? I mean, if we're looking at specifications specifically, would it make the opportunity of something being specified more likely to get through to the sale in the end result?
I would say without a doubt. As somebody who worked as a specification salesperson for a number of years, I'm familiar with the equal or approved caveat that gets used. And I think as a manufacturer, something like Agreement certification is a very strong differentiator for a manufacturer. They can stand there and say, this product has gone through the rigors of a process like Agreement. It's assessed the safety, it's assessed the performance, durability, longevity. It's looked at a number of criteria. It's a process that's assessed raw material, components that may go into a system, and it offers ongoing inspection a couple of times a year to ensure that it remains compliant. And again, it's certification that we know, as we've already discussed, keeps compliant with regulations and changes to legislation. I think that really breeds a confidence that a product does not only achieve that high standard, but is continuously monitored at those levels. Now, I think that then, from a specification clause point of view, really gives you a strong case to say, is the alternative actually an equivalent? Yeah. So I think from that point of view, it does often retain its value in there. And certainly we see more and more with specifiers, warranty companies, insurance providers who are insisting on things like BBA Agreement, as well as being their their mark of choice for feeling confident in the reassurance in that product. So I certainly think third-party certification does stand you apart and make it harder for people to change specifications further down the line.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, I suppose, in today's climate that people need to be making sure that whatever they're sticking to is as specified. So yeah, no, great to hear that from another voice. I think just moving away specifically from the products, obviously, regardless of whether you're a specifier, an installer, a manufacturer, or a technology business like we are. There's obviously operational certification that needs to be considered. I'm going to point this to Graham. Obviously, businesses can benefit from certification of their internal processes, but could you give us an example of the benefits and what would need to be considered for certification, such as, I don't know, ISO 9001, for example?
Yeah. So there was an interesting to me, I guess, example. A company, they didn't decide they needed 9001 themselves. It came, as it often does, as external pressure. I think a customer had asked them to get it, a big customer. And they weren't negative about that. It's just something, been in the back of their minds and they hadn't really got around to. But when they did go for it and achieved it, one of the things that they told me that had come out of it that was quite interesting was it really changed the way they thought about their relationship with their suppliers. Now, one of the reasons for that was, they manufacture some of their own products. They also bought some in from specific suppliers who I think were the only suppliers of. And this was for vehicle adaptation. So, providing wheelchair access to cars and putting bike racks on and all sorts of things. But they felt in a way before 9001 they were stuck with certain suppliers and that they would there was no point in evaluating them because there was nowhere else they could go. Whereas actually as part of the 9001 process they were evaluating them and they had all this data. They could see who was delivering late, who they were having to send stuff back to because of non-conformances, and even if they were stuck with that supplier, as it were, they had something to go to them with and actually engage and say, look, why is it that these are taking so long, or why was this a particularly bad period? And it just really enabled them to have better conversations with their suppliers, and it really helped. Even though everyone might have known beforehand that one particular supplier was always late or whatever it was, having it as a part of a consistent system really made it work for them, because rather than someone saying, oh, let's go and look into this particular supplier, it was already done as part of their day-to-day operations. They were already checking everyone. So it wasn't like they were having to take time out to look into it. The staff were better engaged with it because they knew this was all getting reported on and going up. The supervisors were able to see easier what was happening with particular orders, and then all that information is there in a consistent thing for people to sort of consider at the management reviews as well. So you can start at that point, you can start thinking, well, we need to engage with them, or how can we change this over the next 3 years? How can we reduce our reliance on this particular supplier? And it really just gives a sort of sense of order and sort of a better place for everyone's role in the process of how you can actually go about improving it, rather than just trying to manage that late delivery each time it comes. So it really helped them on a day-to-day basis, and just really changed the way they thought about their relationships, which I thought was quite an interesting, maybe a bit left field, not always what people talk about with ISO 9001, but for them that was a big deal.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think with personal experience of that, and similarly really with some of the digital adoption stuff that MBS is doing, when you take on these things, it can seem daunting, but it's amazing how more efficient it can make you operate as a business internally, which only helps margin. So yeah, I think that's great. Thanks very much. I'm feeling like we're leaving Simon alone a little bit here. So Simon, I'm going to jump over to you on this one.
Not at all.
Specifically about QuietMart, this one, and probably more so for the specifiers. But on the website, you've got a lot of like noise emitting products and sound absorbing products. Could you tell us a little bit more about certification key points when reducing noise and improving acoustics specifically?
Sure. I think, well, QuietMark very much regards itself as a well-being brand, and we're on a mission to increase well-being through improved acoustic comfort. And to improve acoustic comfort, when you look at the WELL standard, for example, light quality, air quality, thermal quality, sound is one of the key concepts of the WELL certification. And to optimize acoustic comfort, it comes from reducing the noise within a space, but it also comes from improving the acoustics. So what we've done, we've certified now over 1,200 products. Some emit sound, so heating, ventilation, kettles, washing machines, laundry, those things, of course, make a sound, and we certify the quietest ones. But we also certify products which improve acoustics, be it plaster systems, walls, floors, doors, ceilings, things that really improve the whole acoustic comfort of a space. And we use the phrase orchestrate your soundscape. So it takes a dual combination of reducing noise from emitting products and improving acoustics from acoustic proving products. So when you put them all together, you orchestrate your soundscape to make it have the best acoustic comfort. So as an organization, we're not just about testing volumes, we're talking about tonalities, sound qualities, but we want to create a directory. And that's what that filter that I talked about in the introductions for. So when people now specifiers go to Mbs Source, when they're sourcing products, I said, Dyson obviously has a hand dryer that emits a sound, but something like Buzzy Space might be a lighting or a piece of furniture, which is available on Mbs, which is sound absorbent. And it's through a combination of putting these things into a space that you ultimately improve acoustics and increase the well-being of acoustic through acoustic comfort. And so that's why we testify across the spectrum.
Excellent. So yeah, cause and action, I suppose, isn't it there really, that making sure you've got the certification against each piece that fits the whole mechanism.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's fascinating to hear about that. If anybody again wants to take a look at the QuietMark stuff, it's on Mbs. I think sort of moving forward, we've heard quite a lot about certification and different aspects, so from acoustics to safety, from operational standards and so forth. Do we think there's anywhere that's sort of got a clear benefit from a certification point of view, but there's not a great deal of uptake in it, or it's lacking in comparison to certain other areas that could be a benefit? And I think, Jason, I'd like to go to you first on this one, if that's okay.
Okay, I think there's a sector that is already growing, but I think will actually continue to benefit far more in the future, and that is the MMC sector, modern methods of construction. When we look at the given housing shortage we currently have, when you look at the government targets for housing, the need to build more quickly is going to continue to drive a lot of innovation within that sector. And I think as we see more properties of those type of constructions, these modern methods of constructions, there will be a greater need for robust certification that continues to satisfy warranty providers, insurers, finances when it comes to social housing. So I think that will be growing. So whilst there's already work in that sector, I think there'll be a long way to go for more robust certification. We know the market is more accepting now of modern methods of construction, but there's certainly a lot of areas where I think that the depth of reinsurance will continue to grow the confidence and support for safety in that sector. Certainly there's a lot of components that go into it that can be certified. And I think to look at how the whole of these properties are put together, so to look at the whole house certification, and looking at things like, does it achieve the pre-manufactured values once it's been constructed? So it's looking at it from being a third-party certification of a component through to, is it installed in the manner that it's intended to give the results that are required? So I think there's a lot of work that will be done around that sector moving forward.
Brilliant. And Graham, is any thoughts from yourself on that? Obviously, looking at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, so from a management system perspective rather than a sort of product certification perspective, it's my experience, and this might not be true across the board. Jason might have a sort of different view on it, but in my experience, maybe there could be a lot more people actually taking up ISO 14001 and ISO 45001. With regards to 14001, there's a clear benefit to the actual organization itself, going back to what we were saying, oh, it's a bit daunting going through it all, and what, we don't have to do it, so why would we? And a little bit different to manufacturing, I appreciate, but a firm of solicitors once told me they saved something like 20 or 30K in a year on electricity after implementing 14001. And they would have, it would have been several offices and things, but it was really simple things they did, like putting lights on timers, replacing lights with LEDs, turning PCs off overnight, all of these things. And the fact that they had the 14001 in place and implemented it meant they were able to have that as an objective, as a business objective, and B, actually measure it as well. So they could have done those things without having 14001, but they wouldn't necessarily know exactly how much they'd saved or had like a structured way of going about it. So I think there's a huge benefits to 14001 and 45001. And I think certainly in micros and pretty much in SMEs as well, those are seen as like a nice to have rather than a must have. Whereas in fact, they could be, people could be benefiting from those a bit more.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. MBS, which will come in a moment, have obviously, we've just gone through the PAS 2060 with yourselves, and prior to doing that, when we were assessing our energy demand within our building, the MBS office is a grade 2 listed building, so it's at the moment currently stuck with natural gas for the heating, which obviously can't be renewably sourced. So we were adamant that we wanted to go with an ISO 14001 accredited supplier on that, because it demonstrated that even though, yeah, it's not an ideal solution for a heating perspective, if we could get it as environmentally responsibly as we could, it was there. So I'm sure people are looking at things like that across the piece. So yeah, that's great. So I think I did have a couple more questions in mind, but from people's responses, they've sort of answered what I was planning on asking. So conscious of the time and people getting on with the rest of the day, so I think I'm going to wrap up with one final question, and go to each of you in turn, if that's okay. And it would be, if you could give the audience one piece of advice in respect to third-party certification, what would that be? So Graham, can I go to yourself first? Would that be okay?
Yeah. My advice would be embrace non-conformances. So it can be a bit of a dirty word. Oh, we got a non-conformance. Oh, whose department was that? And then this goes for internal audits as well as external verification or certification. Non-conformances are really essential to the process. With something like 9001 or 14001, what you're looking for is continual improvement, and you can only do that if you identify the areas that can be improved. And sometimes there can be a bit of a culture of blame about things, or people might fall out with their consultants or their auditors about a non-conformance. And I understand sometimes there can be tricky situations, but overall, the whole point of the exercise is finding non-conformances and then coming up with a plan to fix them and how that's going to improve your business. So embrace non-conformances would be my advice.
Excellent. Jason, yourself, please.
Okay, I've mentioned parts of this earlier, but for me, I think it's really important. Engage with your certification body like a collaborative partnership and plan ahead. Start your engagement early with your certification body, work together, understand the process, start to understand the kind of data and testing that you might require to go towards it, but treat it like a collaborative partnership throughout its life.
Perfect, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Simon, last
not sure I have anything
from you. Yep.
To add to that, really. But thank you.
No problem. I think the thing I picked up from you earlier was, I suppose, the development in the background is make sure you've done the work beforehand before you start to look at these things. So that's perfect. I'd really like to thank all of you so much for your time, and for giving MBS this opportunity to, one, see what you do and share that with the audience, but also to ask you the questions and hopefully provide some education to the listeners. So with that note, thank you very much, and I wish the rest of you a pleasant day. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Lee.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. So yeah, thanks very much to the panelists. Really hope that you found the webinar insightful and importantly useful. Just to wrap up and summarize before I let everybody get on with the day, just some key takeaways. Specifiers are relying on third-party certification to ensure that the specs are robust. I think that goes without saying. But for manufacturers, it can also aid your USP. If somebody's considering specifying something and the usual manufacturer, for example, doesn't have the third-party certification to back this up, it could be a way in there for yourselves into the spec. Various aspects of your materials, products, and systems can be certified. So it doesn't mean that you've got to have the whole thing tested for everything. It could just be one specific area that you focused on. So if you're making, I don't know, a new product that's the most water efficient on the market, you can get just that particular section certified and make sure that you make a noise of that. As much certification as you can provide, though, is going to help deliver more trust on that, but ultimately it's down to yourselves. Safety and sustainability are high on the agenda. Obviously, there's a lot to consider with third-party certification, but from our experience at the moment, these are the two key themes that people are looking for that reassurance on. And your business operations can also be considered. ISO 9001, ISO 14001 are obviously key things that people are looking at the moment. In regards to sustainability, I mentioned Mbs are now PAS 2060 certified, which is carbon neutrality. If you want to know more on that, please feel free to drop me a note. I'd be more than happy to chat through our experience and how we went on to achieve that. It's obviously a big focus for the whole world and not just the construction sector. So the more that we can share knowledge with each other, the better we'll all be. And then lastly, MBS aids surfacing certifications to specifiers and ultimately making sure that specifications are robust and trusted. So if you're keen to get your products and systems listed with third-party certification, please feel free to drop us a note. But hopefully for the specifiers, what we've shown today maybe can help you along your journey with MBS Chorus. That said, if you're a specifier, you want to know more about this, it might be something that you're not completely au fait with, or you might be interested in reading more or listening to more about what the MBS can offer you. Please visit the Mbs.com. The telephone number's there on the screen, or drop us a note, info@thembs.com. And likewise, manufacturers, you can also get to us through those channels, but we do also have a dedicated manufacturers area where you can visit at thembs.com/manufacturers or drop us an email at manufacturers@thembs.com. If you're existing customers and you want to know more about this, please feel to drop your account manager a note. But that said, I hope you found this very useful. And until next time, thank you very much, and I wish you all a pleasant day. Thank you.